Welcome to the Redcaps Podcast, a podcast where we dip our caps into the blood of our listeners and we ramble on about old school games. I hope everybody is recovering from their turkey comas, and on this very special Black Friday episode of the Redcaps Podcast, we are joined by the tabletop engineer himself, Jim Kelly. Jim is a longtime listener to the show, and it was awesome to sit down and chat with him on an actual episode. He's released a bunch of very popular zines, probably best known in the OSR circles for Delver. He's been through the Kickstarter process a bunch of times, and he's a very crafty gentleman. He's got all kinds of terrain and miniatures and accessories around tabletop gaming that he's built, and he's just an awesome person to sit down and have a conversation with. So remember, no mortal can run a red cap, and I hope you can sit back and listen and enjoy as much as I did. Over to the conversation. Hello, folks. I am joined today on the podcast by Jim Kelly, also known as a tabletop engineer, best known perhaps for his various zines like Delver, Bexham Bazaar, his crafting videos on YouTube. Jim, how you doing today?
Hey, Kevin, I'm good. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks for coming in. Now, people that have been listening to the podcast for a while may remember way back, way back in episode 48, you had written in and asked me about, rolling out in the open and keeping some roles hidden. And I did an episode where I answered that. Did I do a decent job? Did you get an answer that you wanted out of that one?
You did. And I wasn't actually, looking for an answer. I just, I'm always curious how other GMs, run their table. And, I've had pushback from players. And so I'm not a GM who is like locked into it's my way or the highway. I'm always open to, changes.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about the zines, because you've got several of them. There's a plethora of zines out there. Everything from Tavern, Delver, which is what I probably know you best as, or Bexham's Bazaar, which I didn't realize until very recently. I had actually heard of Bexham's much before on a crafting YouTuber channel. Now that name of it has just escaped me.
The Tabletop Crafters Guild, maybe, or
might have been something like that. I thought of it like an hour or two ago, and now the name of it's left me. But I didn't hear about it that I hadn't realized, put a connection together on it until recently. So yeah, tell me about your history with the zines. How did these all start?
So yeah, Bexham's Bazaar ran for 33 issues every month. It was a lot. I mean, I was basically creating the magazine. I did have some contributors for it that would give me like adventures or articles and stuff, but I would say 80% of each magazine was me creating stuff. And it was a lot of work every month. And so at the time I was doing Bexham's, I was playing 5e, I was playing war games, I have my hands in a lot of different hobbies. But I really grew tired of 5e. I was running a weekly game at a local gaming store. And then COVID hit. And, at that point, I really started evaluating my happiness with gaming. And my happiness returns to when I was in 6th grade in the early 80s. My mom and dad for Christmas got me the Holmes box, and we started playing D&D. We didn't know what we were doing. We had a few examples at some gaming places that we saw, but we played D&D the way the book sort of described it. And I missed those days. I missed the wonders of taking your level 1 characters into a dungeon and opening a door and coming across an HD8, creature. These days, nobody runs. Back then, man, we'd open a door and we would hightail it. We didn't want to die. And so I think about this time, Professor Dungeon Master, who's another YouTuber, he mentioned a game called, I think, he mentioned Old School Essentials. So I went out, and this was before Old School Essentials went like with their combined books. They had the little individual books and stuff like that. So I got the PDFs. I was blown away. So then I invested in the print copies. I ran some games, and all of a sudden I was 12 again and just laughing and loving it. And so jump forward about a year after playing OSC with some friends. And I was mainly playing online, but now I've been playing with my 12-year-old and some of his friends. And I'm a writer by trade. I'm a technical writer by training. I've written since I got out of college, and writing is just something that comes natural to me. And I'd had this idea in my head to create a zine, a one-shotter, because I love random tables. I like rolling random dungeons where even the GM, I don't know what's around the corner or what's beyond the door. And so I wrote Delver, and I called it Delver 1 because I left open the potential that if people liked it, I might be willing to do a second one. And now I just finished the Kickstarter for Delver 6. And in between the Delvers, because I'm doing those about every other month, in between the Delvers, I still had this itch to write. And so I started writing things that didn't fall into the Delver. I wrote Tavern, which lets players buy and run a tavern between games. And I wrote Guild because I like the idea of having these organizations that players could join to get benefits, pay dues, and maybe get some leads on some other, stuff. And so what's really interesting is it has turned into it has really been a blessing for my backers, because now I spend about half of my work week creating game content. And what a dream job, right? I mean,
yeah, you can't go wrong with that. If you're the whole take your hobby and if you're able to monetize it in a way that doesn't hurt the enjoyment of it, but continues to bring you the joy with it, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you've also got Airlock. I'm not sure, is Airlock still active, or is that an older one that's going
Airlock was Airlock was one of those where I called it Airlock 001 because I never want to close the door. I mean, if it did well, then I want to be able to do another one. I discovered Mothership because I'm a big Aliens fan, and I do play the Aliens RPG. And when I found Mothership, I found it to be just enough crunch to it that I really, really liked it. And I ran a few games. I actually ran an Alien, the original Alien movie. I ran it as a Mothership adventure for some friends, and they just loved it. Dallas ended up surviving, and they still defeated the creature, but it was a totally different take on the movie. So when I finished that game, going back to my random love of random, I realized that this Mothership was really cool to me, but there was a lack of random charts and tables for GMs who want to run it. So I wrote Airlock, and I like props in my games. So I chose Airlock as a test. I wanted to see how far could I push it with getting backers to fund things. Like I included a patch. I included some postcards that serve as handouts the GM can give out and stuff like that. I ended up having, I think there was a total of 15 or 16 props that went out with the zine. 4 of those were little brochure adventure, little mini adventure brochures. And all this was funded by backers who, I'd say, okay, if we hit this funding level, I'll throw in another, ID card, a plastic ID card and stuff. And so by the time everything was done, Airlock was fun. It was a fun Kickstarter to run. I am working on Airlock 2. That's all I'll say. It's probably going to be early next year, maybe first quarter. Airlock 2 is coming along.
Very cool. So how do you find, so you've gone through the Kickstarter process several times. Mm-hmm. What's your view on Kickstarter overall, in the sense of, I see a lot of them where I think people come into it and they're not prepared for Kickstarter, or prepared for everything that comes along with it, in terms of planning out funding and planning out how they're going to handle things. And you see stretch goals that can almost sink Kickstarters at times because they go too far. So how have you managed to manage that and not have any big issues, or have there been issues that you've been able to overcome that you've done a well enough job that we just haven't noticed?
Well, one of the things I feel most strongly about with Kickstarters and what I produce is I don't like to raise funds for a vapor product. So Delver 1 was completely written except for I think 8 pages that were added as stretch goals. So the core of the magazine or the zine was done. And so I was able to tell the backers, look, if you back it, when it's done, I can immediately get the PDF almost within 2 to 3 weeks sent off to the printers. The printer's telling me 2-week delivery. and then I can turn around. And so I won't say it was my promise, but sort of the reputation I've developed with my Kickstarters is that when I launch my Kickstarter, my item or whatever I'm backing is like 80 to 90% done. And I think that's helped me, because I think we've all backed Kickstarters that have these, like, 1 year from now you'll get your rewards, or 2 years. I literally today just got a little board game that I backed. I had to go check. I backed it over 2 years ago, and delays kept hitting and hitting. And so I'm a big believer that I love Kickstarter, but I think Kickstarter has sort of become this like testing ground. It's like, I have this idea for something. Let me just throw out a number. I need $5,000. And if I hit it, we'll make it. And that's dangerous, because one, you're right, add-ons and things, you have to have a grasp of the financial, how many of item A can I buy if I only have 100 backers? Is it financially feasible? And then, so the patch for Airlock, for example, I knew how much I could get the patch for, but I was ordering it from China, right? And I knew there was there could be a delay in ordering it. So then I had to figure in like speedy, like air freight to get them. And so Kickstarter is a great tool, but I am seeing, and I've gotten a lot of heat for saying this, I'm seeing a substantially large number of Kickstarter projects in the gaming world that are funding something that hasn't even been written yet. We have
they're funding the idea of what
funding the idea. And I think that's wrong. I mean, I'm a freelance writer. I've written for freelance projects before. But let me tell you, I tell people all the time as a warning. Anytime you want to back a project that has like 5, 10, 20 writers, here's what you don't know. One or more of those writers is going to be slow in producing, and they're going to slow the project down. It can't be completed until everybody's got their stuff turned in. And we all know that there's delays in printing and shipping and supply chain and all that. So I am very hesitant to back any projects that are more than like 8 or 9 months away from delivery. If you say your project is 12 months or longer away, you've probably lost me. Even if there's Kickstarter exclusives, I'll wait for the retail, if there's going to be a retail, and I'll get it then. I think that's less risk, and I can put my money into projects of people who are creating something that is going to be in my hands in a reasonable time.
Right. The when you were mentioning some of the other items that happened in between Delver and what have you, Lost Homes, where does that fit with all those?
Lost Homes, well, it was funny. I was trying to make this jump to full-time game creator. So I had this idea. I was like, if I could generate a certain amount of money per month to create content, maybe I could do this. So Delver was providing a percentage of income. So I went and I created this Patreon, and I said basically, okay, if you back me every month at $5 for 1 year, which is like $60, you're going to get 4 print copies of 4 zines that I want to do. It was Lost Adventures, which was 12 mini adventures, Lost Hirelings, which was a collection of NPCs, Lost Artifacts, which was magic items and lots of them, and then Lost Pages, which is my go-to, random pages of charts and tables and stuff. And so every week for an entire year, every week I gave 3 PDFs to backers at the $1 or the $5 mark. And so every week I was releasing a page of magic items, 4 magic items, a page of NPCs, 2 NPCs, and a page of random charts and tables every week for 50 weeks or 52 weeks or however many. And then once a month, I was creating a mini adventure that I play tested, and then I would write it up and edit it and submit it. And then and here's what happened. When I started this, that light at the end of the tunnel was like, it wasn't even there. And then all of a sudden, I'm at the 10-month mark, and then I'm at the 11-month mark, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really coming to an end. And I only ever had about 100 backers, patrons that were paying at the $5. But it was enough to allow me to dedicate a few hours a week to create that content. And then I sent out I collated everything into their 4 issues, sent it out, had it printed, and then all of my $5 backers who'd been with me for at least a year got 4 copies in the mail sent to them. And those people who joined me later, I allowed them to pay a PayPal invoice to cover the difference. So I sent out just over 85 packs of those 4 zines, the Lost Tomes, and now I sell them, individually and as a bundle on my own online store. But that was an experience. Let me tell you, I don't recommend that to just anybody. It's not to be taken lightly.
Momentum is key there, I think, the way you're describing it, whereas doing it every week and just keeping that momentum going is probably what.
Yes. If you're, as a writer, I have the discipline, or at least I think I have the discipline to do it. There were a few hiccups. I think there was one time I got really sick. And then there was another time when I was totally out of town and just missed uploading. But overall, my patrons were very, very, I think out of the 52 weeks, I think there were like 48 that delivered on time. So that I consider to be a success. And I don't know if I'll ever do it again. Maybe, but it was a lot. It was a lot of writing and a lot of, you got to be consistent. And yeah.
What do you feel is so you've got fans in almost 3 very distinct realms of the hobby, right? You've got the old school RPG fans that are enjoying things like Delver and what have you. You've got the wargaming side of things, and then you've got the crafters. What's the Venn diagram like, and what's the differences between those different groups? Because I've got to assume that there's a very different response on things that you do from each of them.
Yeah, and it's like, keeping 3 balls in the air when you're juggling, and you got to keep all 3 happy, 3 groups. But there is some overlap. Like, I don't craft. My YouTube channel is what I started first. The crafting YouTube channel came first. That was like 5 or 6 years ago. Wow. And I only craft, or I typically craft things that I am going to use in my game. So I was crafting a lot of dungeon and 5e dioramas and dungeon tiles and stuff like that because I was playing 5e. Then I didn't discover it so much as I kind of got hooked on wargaming right around when COVID was striking. And specifically I do a lot of solo skirmish war games, which are smaller groups of miniatures and stuff. And so I'm very busy with my hobby, but again, I'm very lucky and fortunate and blessed because I am making enough income from my channels and my publications to cover the time I put into those projects. Behind me, you can't see it. The listeners can't.
I'm going to bring that up in just a minute. I promise I'm going to, because you can't miss what's right behind you. I will get to that in just a second. But yeah. So I have a business on the side, and it's exploding right now because it's Christmas season, and I am really, really going nuts right now. I have got so many projects, but it's good because every day is different, and I get to create a new Delver every 2 months, and it's fun. I'm a gamer. I am a gamer, and I get to do things in my hobby, and I get to make things in my hobby and write things in my hobby. So it's a good. I'm very, very happy right now. All right, well, let's jump to the probably close to a ton weighing machine sitting behind you. You do a lot of crafting. If anybody has seen your YouTube video, they're probably going to see a very similar view to what I'm seeing right now, where we're looking into your workshop, and there's a giant laser cutter sitting behind you.
Yeah.
If you watch Jim's YouTube channel, you'll see that he creates all kinds of different terrain, and there was spaceships and all kinds of little cool figurines. What's your favorite tool? I'm guessing the answer is probably what's sitting behind you, but what's your favorite tool of all these different tools that you have? And what sort of stuff do you really enjoy? Like it brings a smile to your face every time you go to make?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've gone through the 3D printing phase, and I still have my 3D printers. And I enjoyed 3D printing when I was really into it because it was a new tool and I was learning stuff and I was designing things. And my skills have progressed through the years. I used to just do like foam and cardboard, and then I got into 3D printing, and the laser cutter has opened up new avenues. Now, the laser behind me, it began as a Glowforge, a little desktop laser. And I quickly outgrew that. It was slow and it couldn't do the bigger things I needed to do. And so I made the jump about a year ago. I decided to get an industrial laser. Now my background is industrial engineering. So it wasn't like I had some knowledge, right, of how to design and use these tools. But the laser is a business, but of course I'm going to use it for my hobby. And I do I make terrain and I do odds and ends stuff, but I'm a big believer that, I don't really have a favorite tool. Whatever I decide to make, I try to pick the tool that's best suited for it. Like tonight, in about another 30 minutes, I'm doing a live crafting session over at the Tabletop Engineer, and I'm making some foam terrain. So I'm going to be cutting XPS foam. I'm going to be using a tool called a Proxon wire cutter, which gets hot and it cuts the foam. So no laser, no 3D printers tonight, just a blade and, a ruler and a hot wire cutter. So, whatever I need, I reach for the tool that's going to get me there.
So how much space in your home do you think is being used up by gaming paraphernalia right now? Is the reason that you're sitting out in the shed right now is because your wife got so upset, or is it how much of the terrain and miniatures is eating up the living space?
I would be slightly embarrassed if I took you on a tour of my workshop. I'm actually in the basement. The basement of our house had an unfinished basement. And so when we moved here, because we wanted to be closer to my kids' school, when we chose this house and it had the unfinished, my wife was like, "Ooh, an unfinished basement." And I was like, "Ooh, an unfinished basement." And so I have a good sized workshop, and I needed it for my business. She recognized that. But yeah, I have a large collection of shelving down here that have tons of terrain and miniatures, and you can see, well, you can't, the viewers can't, but you can see I've got miniature storage on the walls where I keep my minis and things like that. But it is a workshop. It is always frequently cluttered, and then I get it cleaned again. But I do use every bit of space I can.
Good stuff. So I guess I'll lead into a little bit of what you or what you often sell, I guess, is and pitch it as this way. We're coming up to holidays, like you said, you're getting crazy busy. Mm-hmm. What should people be looking at for if somebody wants to buy gifts for folks that are in our hobby? What sort of stuff should they look at that's easy to get and fun that might be outside of the norm for them?
Yeah, it's really interesting. About a month ago, I'm on Etsy. And so about a month ago, when you get a sale, your phone goes cha-ching, and you know you got a sale. So my Etsy store keeps me busy during the holiday season, but during the regular part of the year, it's sort of up and down. There's waves. But starting about I guess it was right at the beginning of October, I noticed a trend. I started getting orders for my miniature displays. I have like 4 different sizes. I have a small one, a medium one, a big one, and then I have what they call the mega. I have been selling on average about 1 mega a day. And the mega, which is behind me on the wall there, it's 8 levels. It's like 2 feet wide, about 2 feet tall.
You're gonna get like what, 8 to 10 minis per level.
Yeah.
So you're probably looking at about 80 minis that you could put on there pretty easy.
Yeah, and the one above it is the half one. That's what I call the dungeon crawl. And so yeah, you can 40, 80 miniatures on the mega, 40 in the thing, and then of course there's the top. I use every bit of space, so I set them on the top too. You get a little extra bonus level there, but it's fun. I personalize the banner. People like to put their name on it. Like I did one today called the Dungeon of Corn. I don't know what the story is there, the Dungeon of Corn.
See, I'd have to find it. I'd be emailing the person being like, okay, you need to explain this. It's on its way, but you need to explain this now.
She said it was a gift for her husband. So I probably will email and say, hey, ask your husband, what's the story? Dungeon of Corn. But it's cool. I think I'm getting a lot of spouses who email. What'll happen is I'll get like 3 or 4 questions before they make the purchase. The wife will say, or the husband will say, hey, how many characters can I put on the banner? Okay, you can put 15 to 20. How many do the miniatures fall off? No, it's like a 2-inch deep, shelf. The miniatures will be fine and stuff. And then, I think they just want to make sure it's a good gift for their spouse. And I'm jealous. I mean, I've got 2 or 3 of my own, but I can't really make any more. And there's very few places to hang them in my workshop right now. So, I do have one called the Ultimate that I'm working on. It's 2 of those side by side. It's going to be called the Giga Dungeon. This is the Mega. I'm making one called the Giga, and it's still in production or prototyping, but it's huge. And I'm thinking I made it because I need the space, and then I'll probably sell it. It won't sell many because it's big.
And people need to remember now, when you're putting your minis on these sorts of shelves, you need to make the low level minis at the top, and as you go deeper into the dungeon,
absolutely,
the stuff goes on the bottom.
You put your high HD creatures at the bottom, your low HD at the top, and keep it organized.
Is there anything else that you think makes good gifts that people would find on places like Etsy or what have you?
Well, I mean, not just my stuff. I tell you, I go out to Etsy all the time and look at whatever games I'm playing. I love acrylic tokens. I think that's a huge, there's a lot of, I don't work with acrylic because it smells awful when you cut it. I vent outside, but I don't need my neighbors smelling that mess. So I don't do acrylic. I do wood, but I will say I've ordered acrylic tokens from Etsy sellers for, like, my son plays a game, and I ordered him some, and they're awesome. I mean, the little paper or cardboard ones you get with a standard game, you punch them out, they're fine. But let me tell you, if you're really into a game, or if your husband or wife or children are into a really specific game, go upgrade them. Get them some acrylic tokens for their game, and they will freak out. I mean, I know I would.
Yeah, my father does. He turns pens. That's kind of been his new hobby over the last few years, and so he does all kinds of wooden pens and everything. Nobody on the podcast will hear it, but like, here's an example of one of his fountain pens. But he also does some of the acrylic stuff, and yeah, he's mentioned too before that the smell on it whenever he's doing the acrylic pens versus the wooden ones. But
yeah.
So I noticed recently, this is a little bit off topic. Actually, I do want to say a shout out to Shay Webster of Roleplay Rescue. He had an episode recently where he was talking about of different things that different people enjoy about games. That some people enjoy sensations, like physical objects, and I think that applies very much to what you do with all the crafting. Is that you seem to get a big kick out of the physical sensation and the tactile nature of the game. So whenever I was thinking of things for putting down notes, Shay's recent podcast where he's talking about the different senses, the MDA framework is what I think he called it. But sensation, game as a sense pleasure, really seemed to click for you. Anyhow, it clicked in my head about you with all the minis and everything. Do you find that the physical contact of stuff makes the game better for you, or do you prefer playing in theater of the mind at times, or is it mostly the physical?
When I'm playing, like, for instance, with old school essentials, I can go either way. I can do theater of the mind, or I can do physical. I like physical. I'm a maker by nature. I like to create and make stuff. So I tell you, one of my best memories recently was when my 12-year-old came to me and said, "Hey, all my friends want to play Dungeons and Dragons." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "We want you to run the game." I said, "Okay." And so I said, he goes, "Do they need miniatures?" I said, "If they bring them, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll provide miniatures." And my son knows my workshop, and he's like, "Can we have these things in there?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." So I see it in their eyes when I drop something on the table that I've spent a lot of time making, and I drop it on the table, and I see all my players' eyes get big. Now, the funny story is, when I was playing 5e, I used to walk into the game store, 20 minutes before the games would begin, and I'd have these bags, huge bags with all my stuff inside. And my players got to where they'd be like, "Uh-oh, he's got a bigger bag this time. It's gonna be a boss fight or something." And the other DMs will make fun of me. They're like, "Dudes, cut it out." And I'm like, "Look, I can't help it. I love miniatures. I love playing on terrain." And so, yeah, I mean, there's something tactile, and I like to hand out props to my players. I like them to be able to look at things and do that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm never going to stop. Never going to stop.
Good stuff. I end most of my interviews with a question. I'm not sure how much most recent ones you've heard, but I like to ask folks, what hasn't been asked to you, or what have I not asked, or what have other people not asked that you'd love to chat about? So what sort of things do you not get a chance to ask others or talk to others about that you'd love to get out there?
Sure. I just this last weekend, I was in Charlotte, North Carolina at a convention called, it used to be called Mace. This year it was called Jeff Con in honor of the person who started the convention. And then next year it's being renamed to Mythic Con per his request. So I got to talk gaming with all kinds of people for the whole weekend. We just sit around and talk. But the one thing that I think as a GM, I rarely get time to sit down with GMs. I mean, there's usually 6 players to every GM, right? On average. It's when you're the GM, you're kind of the lonely guy. You
you can't share the secrets.
No. And I've actually contemplated creating some sort of anonymous group for GMs who are just need to get it off their chest, because it can be frustrating to be a GM, but you love a game, you want to play a game, and you want your players to have a good experience. And so it's tough. And I have been very fortunate that my players in all games, 5e, OSE, whatever, they're very appreciative of what I do. I've gotten gifts, and that I don't expect that, but I think the biggest one was my gaming group a couple years back got me the collector's edition of the 5e DM's guide, the ones with the alternate covers.
Yep.
I didn't know what to say. Because I already had the 3 core books, the standard ones, and here they go and they put their money together and buy me that. It was nice. It was a nice nod that it made me realize that, okay, I guess they like what I'm doing. So to answer your question, the thing I like to talk about is I like to talk about running games, but I don't get to do that very often because, it's usually when I'm sitting down with people, they're players, not GMs.
Right. Yeah. Maybe we need to have a national DM appreciation day where my day job for years and years was as a system administrator, an IT system administrator, and we had the sysadmin appreciation day, and the boss would send us all out for pizza or something. But I think a day where everybody has to just sit back and go, yeah, look how many hours that guy put in for prep on this thing.
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
It's funny. I've run many a game where I rolled it at the table rather than prep it. And I tell my players, tonight we're playing random, and I roll things and stuff. And so, listen, if you play a game, and it doesn't matter whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or some other RPG or whatever, but if you've got somebody who is taking time to give you a great fun 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, each week or once a month or whatever, I'm not telling you to go give them a hug or buy them a gift, but look them in the eye and acknowledge to them that, look, I like playing a game, and I love that you like GMing the game, and I'm appreciative of it, because you get burnout, you get tired, you have creative blackouts, where it's just hard to come up with stuff, and nobody should be expected to sit at the head of the table every day, every week, every month, whatever, without some breaks or without some thank yous and stuff like that. So I'm not doing it for me. I'm telling players out there, next time you play a game, tell your GM just, hey, we don't tell you enough how appreciative we are of what you do. And so if you can do that, I'll be happy knowing there are GMs out there who are being appreciated too.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show and all the awesome stuff that you put out with the zines and what have you. Where can everybody go find all of your stuff? Where can they find you and all the awesome work that you've done?
If they go to thetabletopengineer.com, that's a jumping off page to all my channels, my online store, things like that. So put the word THE at the beginning, thetabletopengineer.com, and they should be able to find everything they need.
Awesome. And yeah, you can find all the zines there. You said you're about to do a live stream on YouTube here shortly. How often does that take place?
I just started doing it. This will be like number 4 or 5. I do it every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. I used to do a live crafting every week for patrons, and I kind of got burned out, and that's been a few years back. And then I decided to do it again because people were asking me, when are you going to start doing live crafting again? And I had the itch. So I'm itchy again. And now I'm tonight, like I said, I'm making some dungeon tiles for a very specific project. And I've got my sheet here with all the measurements and stuff. So I kind of have a game plan going into it, but it allows me also to talk to my audience. We do the chat while I'm narrating and putting the camera down on the table. They hit me with questions and it's fun. I enjoy it.
All right, awesome. So hopefully everybody who's listening here gets a chance to come and check out one of the live streams, and they can also chime in and let you know that they're appreciating everything that's going on. And yeah, if you need a gift for Christmas or whatever holiday you may be celebrating over the next couple months, check out Etsy. If not, your page, then some of the several other ones that are out there. There's lots of cool little gift ideas for people. And yeah, I really appreciate you coming on to chat with me. I really appreciate too. You're one of the early folks that was reaching out to me whenever I first started this. So I appreciate it, because as you were saying, it's nice to get feedback, just to know there's people out there listening. So I'm really appreciative of that, and I thank you for reaching out way earlier and then coming back here after I had my long break and going, yeah, you're back. Can I come on? And I was like, yes, definitely you can. I
think there's a lot of us that want to tell you that we're so glad to have the Redcaps back. And I remember you advertised in Delver. I think it was Delver 2 or 3. There was a Redcaps podcast ad in there, but we're glad to have you back, Kevin. So keep up the good work, and I would love to come back some other time and talk about something other than myself. Next time, let's talk about gaming.
Sounds good. We will schedule a time, and probably sometime in the new year, because I'm going to take a small break over the Christmas holidays. Nothing like my last one, I promise, over the Christmas holidays. But yes, once we get back in the new year, we can definitely schedule up something like that, and we'll pick a game or something and mutually go through it if you'd like.
That'd be fun. I'd enjoy it.
Awesome. All right, folks, I'm going to pass this to future me to do the editing, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, folks, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Redcaps Podcast. I hope you enjoyed, you learned something, and that you're eager to come back for more. If you head over to the website, www.theredcaps.net, you'll find all the links to all the ways to contact me. There's ways you can drop me voicemails, SpeakPipe, email, all that good stuff. Jump over there, send some feedback, let me know what you're thinking of the show, what's stuff you'd like to see come up in the future. I'd love to hear all of it. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, never let your caps dry out. Stay safe, have fun. We'll talk again soon.